Hey everyone, it's Andromache, and I want to help you to correctly set up your Alliance Conquest defense lineups. So the principles I'm about to discuss here, they are broad principles, and you don't have to always apply them. Like you'll see some of you I will message, and I will actually break my own rules when I tell you to adjust your lineups. However, I want to teach you a few things that will help you to set up lineups that at the very least are decent lineups and will work most of the time. To be fair, defense is always at a disadvantage. So the chance that a defensive lineup works is actually very, very low. However, there are defensive lineups that can be really strong. And so everything that I teach you is basically just to increase our chances as much as we possibly can. And sometimes that will work and sometimes it won't. I mean, if somebody is like 10 million power more than your lineup and they're hitting you, you could have a strong defense, but you're still going to probably lose. But that's okay because we want to increase our odds as much as possible, knowing that we're going to lose most of them. So with that being said, here are the basic principles that you want to follow. Most of the time, if your heroes release rage in the defense lineup, they will release rage from left to right. So if all heroes fill up at the same time, your heroes will release rage from left to right. So this is important because, for example, if your heroes are stunned and you don't have a hero on the left-hand side that clears off debuffs, then your heroes are going to miss out on some turns. Or even if they're not stunned, let's say you have your attack heroes on the left, like let's say you do something like this, okay? The problem with this is that if your heroes all fill up at the same time and they happen to have defense down on any of them or attack down, now your Boyd, your Sodoma, and your Naris are going to attack before their attack down debuff is removed off of them. So we want to put buff clearers first. So that's your Tanya, that's your Edmund. If you were attacking, you'd put Rod, but we do not use Rod or Lilia in our defense lineups ever. If you want to attack with Rod, that's up to you, but please do not put him in your defense lineups, and definitely do not put Lilia in your defense lineups. She is a waste. I know she portrays herself as a defense hero, but she is useless. Do not use her, okay? So what we want to do after we've put a buff clearer is then to put a defense down hero. After that, we can then fill up the rest of our board with attackers or rage reducers or rage increasers or something like that. But generally speaking, this is the order. So now it depends what you put next. So if I want Sodoma in my lineup, I don't want to put her in the middle. Usually she goes in the middle, but right now I have Edith on the left, so that would be a bad idea. So I want to put her over here in this spot, and so that she can increase the attack of two heroes to the left and the right. So here it really depends on your strategy. You could put Boyd first and then Sodoma and then Naris, which means that Naris is more guaranteed to take Sodoma's attack up than Boyd. However, if you want Naris's rage to fill up more often, you'd put him in the middle and then Boyd at the end. Now, if you had someone like Cujo, who honestly, I'm not a huge fan of him, this is where you could start switching the order a little bit. So you could either do defense down first, then your buff clearer, and then your attack heroes. Or you could put your buff clearer and take a risk and choose to rather put Sodoma in the middle so she gets hit more often, and then your defense down at the end. However, unless your defense down hero, so your Edith or your Cujo, is really, really weak, I would suggest keeping your defense down hero as your second or your first hero. Now, you only have two. I mean, you kind of have Carvel, but you only have two defense down heroes that puts defense down on everyone, and that's Edith and Cujo. So please don't put them in the same lineups. That is a complete waste of debuffs, and so you want to split them and usually put one in each defense. You don't have to, but if you are going to use them both, don't put them in the same lineup. The next thing I see a lot of people do, which I would advise against, is to put your Fiona and your Sodoma in the same lineup. The reason I'm not a fan of this is because both of them give attack up, and that means you're essentially wasting that buff. What happens when you get to your defense lineup 2, and now you have no more attack up heroes? Now you might say, we have Rod, but we don't want to use Rod. And the reason for that is because he has the debuff that makes your heroes sometimes miss, which is really bad for defense, because if your heroes take a really long time to fill out rage, which they will, and then they miss their shot, that is very detrimental to a defense lineup. So that's why we don't use Rod. All right, so that's the basic concepts. And now if we want to get a little bit more advanced and start looking at some lineups that do really well, we're going to have to start talking about heroes like Paddy and Edmund and Apan. So a lot of people don't have these heroes really strong, but that's okay, because even if you put these as your secondary lineup, they can survive pretty well. So here's a lineup that I used last Conquest, and it survived 2 times and died on the 3rd attack, which is pretty good for a defensive lineup. So this is what I used. And you could have different variations of this, and I've tried different variations in Royal Arena, and there's a lot of different combinations that work really well. So the logic behind the order here is that I want to make sure that my defense down happens before my main attacks. So that's why I put Edith in the first position. Then I put Fiona next. So I wouldn't do something like this. I want Fiona next because if the order of rage releases from left to right, then she's going to go first and she's going to buff Apan, Norris, and Edmund. Okay? Also, having her and Norris next to Apan means that they will get hit the second most amount of times out of all the heroes on my lineup, which is good because burning and poison together constantly is very damaging and can take out an entire lineup pretty easily, especially if you get that defense down applied. We don't have a healer here, as you can see. I mean, Apan gives a slight healing buff, but really there's no healer here. But this lineup survived 3 whole rounds, which is pretty impressive. So the reason they could do that, though, is because of Apan's small health buff, and then Edmund, who's coming in and he's clearing off any debuffs like burning or poison that are getting given to me. Also, Apan's counter is excellent. So if anyone tries to kill my Fiona or Norris, they're probably going to kill themselves doing so, which is why this is really powerful. A different type of lineup you could do as well, and this could work if you have really weak Paddies or Norrises, Edmunds, is you put still your defense down hero all the way on the left, and then you put your 2 weaker gold heroes like that, and then you put your Norris or your Fiona at the end. This is a slow death for someone, so the goal here is that they're slowly dying by counter, or they're dying because they keep trying to kill off your middle 3 heroes, but in the meantime, Norris and Edith keep going off. Also, if they choose to go for your Norris and your Edith, they're stronger heroes, so they should last longer, at least in my lineup. And while they're doing that, a bunch of tiles are hitting the 3 middle heroes, which means that Edmund and Paddy are stopping your enemy's rage over and over. So this is also a really good defensive lineup. Some other variations of this could include Tanya to add extra hero, but then you would probably put in something like this. Where's my Norris? You do something like that, or you could do that. Other lineups that have worked pretty well, not my favorite, but they're decent, is to put your Sodoma next to your Apan so that all the counters that's happening with her and Apan have attack up added to them, which is really powerful. But for that same reason, you could go ahead and add in your Fiona over here, give attack up to all of your counters. Over here, you don't have defense down, but you're relying on rage reduction and you're relying on the burn and poison to kill your opponents slowly. So the long and short of it is you want your buff clearers to the left, followed by your defense down, and then your 3 attackers. If you use Sodoma, please make sure, do not put her on the edges of the board. That is a waste. Do not put Sodoma in between heroes that don't do a lot of attack or any attack at all. Lineups like this, they're a waste. Don't do that. Make sure she is between 2 attackers, okay? Like that would be okay. Sometimes it's not possible, but most of the time it is, so make sure she's in between. And then, of course, if you use Fiona, try to make sure that she is to as far to the left as she can be without being before your Edith or your Tanya, so that she's buffing everyone else. Other than that, I may contact you and give you a few exceptions. Like sometimes I'll put a really, really strong Edith in the middle. It just depends on your lineup. But if you follow those basic rules, you'll have a lot more success overall. In fact, I would recommend you even try some of those lineups in your defense in Royal Arena, especially the ones where you have Apan in the middle. If you don't have a strong Apan, let me quickly show you. Another good lineup would be, again, something like this. Let's put that in her. There we go. This is also a very good lineup. Paddy is healing and stopping rage and debuffs. Then you have Edith, who's going to go first, put defense down. You have Fiona, who's going to put attack up. And then Norris is going to hit over and over with that attack up from Fiona that's helping and the defense down from Edith. In this case, it's okay that I put Tanya at the end because let's say all my heroes had defense down and attack down on them, okay? When Fiona goes off, she's going to clear the attack down off of the heroes and put attack up, which is the most important thing. If you attack with defense down, it's not the end of the world unless you're attacking Apan, whose counter will hurt you. Otherwise, if you can't clear off defense down, it's not such a biggie, but you want to always make sure that you have attack up on before your main attackers hit. So this is another lineup you could use. You could also switch someone out for an Edmund. So any combination of Edith, Fiona, Paddy, Norris, Apan, and Edmund are going to be really, really strong defenses. I hope this was helpful. I know it was long. Feel free to play me on ×2 or 3 or 4 speed. I won't be offended. See you around.